All of the food we eat and much of the clothing we wear comes from plants and animals that are raised on farms. Farms are different in type, in size, and even in name. For example, cotton, rice, and tobacco farms are sometimes called plantations. And large farms where animals are raised are usually known as ranches. An orchard is a farm where fruit is grown on trees. And a vineyard is a farm where grapes are grown on vines. Generally, a farm is operated by a family, and during the growing season, every family member has a part in tending the crops and livestock that are being produced for market. Most farms raise 2 or more crops at the same time. This is called diversification. This farmer has wheat and corn planted side by side. A few farmers or ranchers specialize in only one product. This man's crop is mink, raised for its soft, silky fur. From an airplane, it's easy to see how the land is divided into different crop areas. The nature of the soil, the climate, and the average amount of rainfall let the farmer know which crops he can grow profitably. Cranberries, for example, are raised in bogs where the soil is wet and spongy. Rice is another crop that takes a lot of water. It also needs extra time to grow and must be raised where the summers are quite long. Western cattle ranches are generally located in rugged areas where grass is plentiful. And sheep are sometimes found in mountainous areas where the grass is short and sparse. Some farmers use the same methods their grandfathers used many years ago. The cowboy still wears clothes much like those of his grandfather's time, and he still rides horses for some of his work. Farming was quite a bit different in grandfather's time. There weren't any tractors, so the machinery had to be pulled by horses. It was mighty slow going. Farmers had to work a whole day on a job that can now be done with modern machinery in only a few hours. To harvest his cereal grain crops, grandfather needed many strong helpers. After the grain was cut and tied into bundles, the crew of helpers stacked them in piles called shocks. The grain was dried in the sun. Then strong arms hoisted the bundles into wagons. The full wagons were driven alongside steam-powered threshing machines. There, more strong-armed workers pitched the bundles into the machine's chopping knives. Inside the thresher, the tiny seed kernels were separated from the rest of the plant. The separated seed was then collected in a wagon for the trip to market, while the straw and chaff were blown into a stack. The farmer could use the straw as feed or bedding for his animals during the winter. Farming in those days was done mostly with horsepower and hand power. It took 9 minutes to milk a cow by hand. And almost every farm had a barnyard flock of chickens, which the children cared for every day. Grandmother's hands were busy with chores, too. She made butter by churning cream. It took a good many ups and downs before the cream finally turned to butter. So you see, in our grandparents' day, life on a farm meant hard work, done mostly by hand. But two things changed all that. The first was the gasoline engine. 50 years ago, this was the latest farm tractor, powered by a gasoline engine. It helped to start the big change in farming. Today's better, more powerful tractors make the farmer's job easier and faster than ever. Electricity brought about the second great change in farming. Today, one farmer with modern electric milking machines can milk many cows at the same time. Machines help him with other jobs too, like sorting apples automatically. Even the old-time chicken house has been transformed into a modern egg-producing plant. Machines gather the eggs from the chickens, then grade them and package them for market. Machines carry feed that's specially prepared to make today's livestock grow into healthy, marketable animals. To continue in his business, a farmer must know everything he can about what he grows. All of his products come from the soil in one way or another. Before he can grow anything, he must till the soil. That is, loosen it so it's soft and free from undesirable plants. To do this, he uses machines called plows, cultivators, and harrows. When the ground is ready, the farmer fills the planting machine. It's called a seed drill. In one compartment, he places the seed kernels. In this case, it's barley, a cereal grain. Fertilizer is placed in another compartment. It contains mineral elements the plants need to help them grow strong and healthy, and hopefully make more money for the farmer. Now the seeding operation begins. The seed drill places the tiny kernels in the ground and at the same time enriches the soil. In the moist, warm soil, the seeds begin to sprout and grow. During the entire growing season, the plants can fall prey to their many enemies. Fungus diseases can ruin the farmer's crop. Too much rain can drown the tiny plants. Too little can cause them to burn up in the hot sun. Or the entire crop might be eaten by insects. So the farmer uses other machines to fight these enemies. The airplane can spray his field with chemicals that kill insects and weeds without harming his crop. Fortunately, most of the farmer's grain ripens unharmed. It's now ready for harvest. Wheat and cereal grains produce only one crop a year, while radishes, for example, can produce many. For them, the time from planting until harvest is only a few weeks. Almost all harvesting is done with big machines. They move through the field, cut the grain from its stalk, and separate the seed kernels from the straw, all in one operation. Because it combines the cutting and separating operations in one machine, this monster is known as a combine. Here it's used to harvest rice. A slightly different version of the combine harvests the wheat crop. Since the farmer wants to get his crop in quickly, he often uses more than one machine. In areas where the grain does not ripen evenly, farmers first use a machine called a swather to cut the grain and lay it neatly into windrows. Then the sun and wind dry and cure the grain. A few days later, the combine with a pickup attachment sweeps up the grain and completes the threshing operation. From the fields, the grain is hauled to nearby country elevators where it's sold and shipped to market. These soybeans are being harvested to be made into vegetable oil and margarine. Combines also thresh millet, which is an important ingredient in making birdseed. Root crops are harvested in a different way. They have to be lifted from the ground because the usable part of the plant is underneath the soil. Onions are harvested in this way, and so are potatoes. This machine not only digs them from the ground, but also provides a place for sorting and inspecting them. Once cotton was harvested by human fingers. Today, tractor-powered mechanical fingers strip cotton bolls from the plants and blow them into a wagon. Some machines are operated by many people, all working together. Sweet corn is picked by laborers who move steadily through the field. The packing machine follows right behind them. Celery is harvested by a big machine which also follows the workers as they cut the stalks from the plant. The celery plants are inspected and packed on the machine right in the field. But a very small machine is used to harvest cranberries. Steel teeth comb the berries away from the plant and into a hopper. There are many different harvesting machines. This one picks mint leaves used to make peppermint flavoring. This one picks and shells beans and peas in one operation. 3 separate machines are used to harvest nuts. First, a knocker shakes the tree, and the ripe nuts fall to the ground. The second machine sweeps the nuts into windrows. The third is like a giant vacuum cleaner. It picks up the nuts and puts them in a hopper. Later, they'll be washed and processed. But there are still crops that must be picked by hand. Apples, grapes, and other soft perishable fruits are gently picked by people who follow the harvest from one area to another. If a farmer raises livestock, he usually has to harvest a crop of hay to feed them. Here again, he uses machines. Some farmers pack the hay into bales. Others chop it up and store it in a round, tall tank called a silo. Green corn is stored in the same way. In the winter, it's all mixed with other grains and fed to the cattle. Some of the corn crop is allowed to ripen fully and then is picked by this machine. This corn will also be used to feed livestock. There are hundreds of crops grown in the United States and almost as many different ways of harvesting them. The job of growing, harvesting, and marketing the world's food becomes more important each year. For as long as man is on the earth, he must raise plants and animals to sustain his life. And as our population converts, he and his machines will have to work even harder to grow and harvest the foods and fibers we need to exist in this changing world.